Hi there YouTube, this is the Magnus, and this time I'm bringing you some Total War Warhammer content, but we're going to talk about the expansion, or the DLC I should say, the Warlord, or the King and the Warlord I should say, my bad. And let's talk about the good, the bad, and whatever else there is, as far as we're going to especially focus on multiplayer, obviously. So it's been out a while, as well as the accompanying patch, and let's talk about the different factions that were affected. Number one, Chaos. The Aspiring Champion was a very, very welcome addition, and so is the Feral Manticore. They both allow Chaos to be more competitive. I still believe they're one of the weakest factions, but it certainly allows them to be a threat in a lot of matchups where before they were absolutely no threat at all. I feel that the new Jav Cav was probably the last thing on Earth that they needed. Some anti-large Cav would have been cool, or a better performing monster unit, since most of them are relatively crappy most of the time. But all in all, it was a big boon for Chaos, and that was a good thing to see. The other two factions that were affected the most, of course, were the Dwarfs and the Greenskins. And I feel for the Greenskins, they were already a pretty darn good faction, and it made them even better, more competitive, and it gives a lot more variety to their build. Before, I feel like infantry spam was pretty much the way to go. Sure, you threw in some cavalry because they had some cheap options and some strong options, but all in all, I feel like the Greenskins with squigs and squig hoppers and all the regiments of renown, all of a sudden they're a lot more versatile, putting them almost on the level of versatility of the Empire, which is really cool. I think the only thing that holds them back is the limited lores of magic, and their missile units being, very subpar comparatively. So it was definitely a helpful addition to the Greenskins. I also think it was a lot of fun. I mean, squigs are hilarious, things eating dwarfs. I mean, and their animation, it's just fantastic. Skarsnik is really freaking cool with Gobla, and if you follow the lore at all, he's one of the most interesting and engaging characters there are. So it's just cool to get to play with him. Taking a look at the Dwarfs, definitely some much needed units. They've got units that can do fire damage now, and they've got slayers that can actually take a charge and slow down whatever attacks them so that they can actually engage. I feel like the Dwarfs gained a lot of versatility as well, whereas before you always knew what units they were going to bring. Now, not so sure. Of course, there was also the addition of the new factions, which for campaign was fantastic. New start positions, new sub-factions. I can't have enough of it. I hope they do it for all the Empire sub-factions and all the Dwarfs and everything else. Get Ulgrim up where he belongs. Ungrim, that is, Iron Fist. That would be so cool. I definitely think this is a great direction for Total War Warhammer to go in, with these regiments of renown, but even more importantly, these new sub-factions that give you an opportunity to play the campaign in a new start position. It also presents you with some unique units and lords for using in multiplayer, especially things like dwarfs that are ethereal and things like that. Just things you'd never see before, and I felt it brought a lot of color to the community. The patch in general, everything that they did seemed to make a lot of legendary lords a little more viable, which I thought was good. And I've noticed, at least for me, most battles are lasting longer, which I think is a needed change. They were a little too arcadey, a lot like Rome when it first came out, and now they're lasting longer, which allows you more time for making tactical decisions during the battle, which is a very important thing in my opinion. Now let's talk a little bit about the bad. Of course, let's just get it out of the way. I love this DLC. If you haven't bought it, put your money down. You will not regret it. It's absolutely fantastic, and it adds so much replayability to both multiplayer and to the campaign that you'd be crazy not to get it. I mean, it really is that good. But there are a couple of things I think could have been done better, or shouldn't have been done at all. The two things that pop out to me right away is that 2 of the legendary lords became entirely too powerful. One of them is Lewin Leoncoeur. He's very important to the Bretonnia army. He always has been, and provides a significant buff. But they overdid it, and now at this point, Bretonnia is incredibly hard to defeat if you can't get rid of the king. And considering he can fly, and not all factions have flying units, and he's extremely survivable, and he regens, I feel like they chose to make Bretonnia more competitive by just saying, okay, well, let's just make this one character, you know, make everything so much better for Bretonnia, and then boom, we're done with it. And I just think that's the wrong approach. I think, you know, adding some stat tweaks to different units would have been important, or, you know, when they do the full launch of Bretonnia, which I'm hoping happens really soon, adding some units that with the right stats to kind of flesh them out would have been a much better choice than just instead of just saying, let's make Lewin Leoncoeur make every unit on the field awesome. Because now I've seen their spearmen and their pole arms hold up against things like great swords for unreal amounts of time. It just feels kind of gamey. The only person I can say is more OP for their faction is Thorgrim. Thorgrim's just ridiculous. The amount of boost he gives the melee attack, along with a runesmith, along with the engineer, who now has buffs that affect not just ranged units. There's just too much buff stacking going on there, where the stats of the unit don't even matter anymore, because they're getting just as much melee attack or more than what they have on the card from having Thorgrim and the runesmith and whatnot on the board. It's just too much. They have way too wide of a range. The fact that they're virtually perpetual, it's just too much. Not that the dwarfs are overpowered now, but I would have rather seen some units made more usable, or, you know, the new units be stronger. Something that wouldn't feel as gamey as, if I can't kill Thorgrim, I'm not going to beat the dwarfs. So those are really the only 2 things that I didn't like about the DLC and the accompanying patch. Other than that, you know, it's absolutely fantastic. I'd give it 4.5 out of 5 stars for the price. I think it's a definitely must buy. So if you haven't picked it up, go out and get it. For those of you that do have it, I'd love to see your comments as far as what you like and didn't like about the DLC, what you did and didn't like about the patch. I feel it's done a lot to bring balance to multiplayer, which is fantastic. And I wasn't sure when they first came out with Total War Warhammer that we were going to get any of the sub-factions. I know they said, you know, each of the playable factions would be represented, so I was thinking you'd get all 15, you know, things like Chaos Dwarfs and Tomb Kings and all that stuff, Skaven. But I didn't know we were going to get like the different, you know, the different clans and Carax for the dwarfs, or different green skin groups, or are we going to get Middenheim and all that stuff now? I just think that's so freaking cool. I'm glad they did that. Can you imagine when this game's finished, when you have 15 different factions and 30 or 40 sub-factions and God knows how many legendary lords? It's just the replayability is going to be amazing, and I think they're well on their way, as I've said before, to having the best Total War game ever made. I was a bit skeptical about the fantasy thing. I feel completely different now. So I hope this review helps you decide whether to buy or not, and gives you some thoughts about what's good and useful in the DLC and the accompanying patch. Until the next time, this is the Magnus. Take care, and I'll see you on the ladder.